Gonna go live. Here we go. Hey everybody, this is David D. Hilster. I'm a critical thinker, dissident scientist, and today I have finally, I promised for many months, many months, and of course they have the big wedding coming up in the UK. There are huge problems in the entire world, but we're all fixated on some wedding in the UK, and it's all your fault, Stephen Hurrell. But welcome. My special guest is Stephen Hurrell, and he is, of course, the author of the Expanding Earth and Dinosaurs and the Expanding Earth. Welcome, Stephen.
Oh, thank you, David. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Ah, no, this is a pleasure. And like I said to everybody who is a subscriber to my channel, this is a must-read book. If you like science, and if you like critical thinking, and you're tired of, like I always say, you're not buying exactly what mainstream physics and cosmology are selling, this is the book for you. To me, it's a book, to sum it up, that when you read the evidence that Stephen puts forward as an expert in in mechanical engineering about the size of dinosaurs and gravitational field, the evidence, in my opinion, is overwhelming. And not only that, once you realize and you see that evidence that paleogravity was actually less, there's huge implications from that. And that, I think, is a wonderful way to open up the door to being a critical thinker and questioning things like the Big Bang and plate tectonics and looking at expansion tectonics and alternatives to the models and everything that everybody are giving us. So before we start, tell us a little bit about your background. What not about how you got into this, but what is, so that people know who you are and what your background is.
Well, I'm a design engineer, or I was a design engineer when I came up with the idea, and I was designing various structures. And from that, it naturally flowed on that I knew how to calculate stresses and whatever in structures, and I just applied those same ideas to dinosaurs, and I knew about the limits to size of structures, and of course dinosaurs had exactly the same limit.
Yeah, one of the things, I don't mean to interrupt, but I remember, I think when I talked with you, wasn't it the case that you were given something at your job that you were going to take an object and you had to make it double in size or something? Am I correct that you had that kind of thing going on?
Yes. At the time, I was working at the Electricity Council Research Centre, and my whole job, if you like, was to take the small size lab scale inventions that the scientists came up with, and once they got them working in the lab, to then try and scale those up to become larger, so they were bigger structures. And of course, so if you like, my whole job was to take things from a small scale into a large scale. And so I think it's fairly natural that that everything just flowed from that, really. When you build things bigger, you have to take account of the fact that although you double something in linear scale, in linear size, the area is 4 times larger, and the volume is 8 times larger, and this has a dramatic effect on how large you can build something.
So basically, that is sort of, when I talk with you, that was one of the things that really struck me. That was really was in your head, and when you started then to apply it to dinosaurs. And why don't you tell us about the story, because the backstory is really important, I think, because it shows the process of a person like yourself who is a critical thinker. And tell us the story. I know you were on vacation or something, but with this in your head, you were knowing, and for the audience who doesn't know, just take a cube and look at a cube and then say, I'm going to double the size of a cube. And how many cubes do you need? And how big did the area increase? And how big did the volume increase? And what you're saying is if you take a cube and double its size and you put 8 cubes there, it goes from 1 to 8. And then the area goes 4 times. So that was in your head. And then you went on vacation in Portugal or something like that, I guess, that really spawned your... Now, tell us a story about how you got into this whole idea of dinosaurs.
Yes, we were on holiday. We went over on a beach holiday, over to Portugal in the Algarve. And at the time, for some reason, I just started thinking about dinosaurs. And so from my work experience, I knew that there was a great problem with dinosaurs of how could they get so big? Because if you look at something like a giraffe, the giraffe's heart is actually it couldn't actually become much bigger because its heart couldn't withstand the pressure. And an elephant couldn't get much bigger because it's actually it's actually so heavy that it can't actually run anymore. What we actually see in an elephant is just a very fast walk when it's actually moving. So I knew all about this, and of course I started wondering, well, how was it possible for dinosaurs to become so large? And of course, one answer was that if gravity was a half, or if gravity was less, then that actually controls the scale of life. So I knew that gravity controlled the scale of life, and I then started thinking, well, if gravity was less, this would allow dinosaurs to become larger, and from that I then calculated that gravity needed to be roughly about a half to account for the size of dinosaurs.
And so I'm gonna let me ask you. This is a question I don't think I've really asked you before. When you came across this, how do I put this? This is not an easy thing to accept for a lot of people, right? I mean, if you're thinking about it, and you follow science, like I grew up with the Apollo age, and the moonshots. I love that, and I'm a science lover from the beginning, and continue to be a science lover. But at this point, Stephen, you're saying to yourself, there's no one else around, that the gravity's less. This is not a small thing to say, knowing what you've been taught in school. What was your thought process? No. I remember when I was first exposed, when I got into this. I'm sitting here with you because of a guy who showed Einstein wrong back in the 1940s. He was an Argentinian physicist. And I remember I had no problem at that point. He says, oh, Einstein's wrong. Here's the papers why. Did you have any qualms? What was the emotional side of you that said? Did you go through a conflict in you, or did you just go into that with no problem? No, I think there was a definite conflict because although I suppose I was thinking, as I remember it, I thought it was a fantastic idea, and so as I thought through it more and more, I couldn't see anything wrong with it, and I could calculate exactly how what sort of value I was looking at. I was looking at round about a half of the present day value, and I suppose the fact I was on holiday as well helped, because I think we were on holiday for a fortnight, so I had a whole fortnight to just mull over the various ideas and lounge on the beach, build some sandcastles with my son, and gradually just mull over all the ideas. And I think at the end of the holiday, I'd come away with the idea
that I'd worked out gravity was a half. The only way that, or the most logical way that gravity would be reduced to a half would be if the Earth was smaller in diameter. So from that point of view, I'd never heard of the expanding Earth, but I'd come up with the idea, well, the Earth would need to be half its present diameter, and just from the fact that we know that Mars has reduced gravity, therefore the Earth should be smaller.
Okay, but I'm going to stop you here. I'm going to stop you here again. Because I mean, okay, let me get this, because you said you sort of mulled in your head, but it doesn't sound like you just didn't it was sort of like me when I heard Einstein could be wrong. Okay, because I didn't have it doesn't sound like you had a conflict. You didn't stick. Okay, you're in Portugal on vacation, and of course you're more relaxed, so a lot of times you think more clearly, actually, right? But you didn't sit there. You're going to say, you're not saying to yourself, okay, Stephen, I'm thinking now that the Earth was half its size, half its mass, right? Or whatever, a lot less mass. And the implications for this is enormous. We're not taught this in school. If I go to anybody and say this, they're going to think I'm crazy. Did that ever go through your head?
I suppose. Well, I think my thoughts at the time was that this is an interesting idea. I'll go back home and I'll try and prove it wrong. That was my first idea. It probably. I think what I thought was, this must be wrong. There must be some error in this thinking, because if it's true, it's so fantastic. It explains why the dinosaurs were gigantic, and I didn't know about the expanding Earth theory at that time, but obviously it explains that it fits in exactly with that concept, and also it also when I got home and I found out about the expanding Earth concept at that time. No one knew why it was expanding, in so much as actually increasing mass was only one of a number of possibilities. There was sort of density changes in the Earth, and all sorts of different concepts of why the Earth might be expanding.
Okay, so I'm gonna. Sorry again. Very good. So basically, what I'm getting from you is that you were on the beach. You really did think to yourself at the time and say, "Okay, I got to go try to maybe prove this wrong." And then you started to think about, okay, the scientific method. Really, using a scientific method, it sounds like that you were going through in your head, where you were going to either, and you're saying you didn't even know about the expanding Earth and that, but you went home at that time to start doing research and saying, okay, this is what the mechanical evidence, really, this is what you're looking at, right? You're looking at, from your side, the mechanical evidence, the really Newtonian type of evidence of size and mass and what can survive in the gravitational field, what it meant. And now you're going to go home and you're going to say, you're either going to debunk that or you're going to find out what's going on. Won't you tell us now you're home, what was the process? Where did you find this? Because this is fascinating. I always find it fascinating. Where did you go? I mean, this is not, this is before the age of the internet, right?
It's well before the age of the internet.
So you did not have a real easy task. You didn't just like go to Google and search bigger Earth, smaller radius Earth. Tell us, it's a fascinating, especially for our younger viewers. I have a lot of younger viewers. Tell me, how did you go home and start doing this research? Take us through that process.
Well, obviously I was working at that time, so obviously this had to take. This was really on the back burner. It is still a hobby, really. I mean, so from that point of view, as soon as I could, I went along to the local library, and I found a very helpful librarian. Explained to my problem of I was looking for some geological evidence that might indicate a smaller diameter Earth in the past, and eventually we came up with the expanding Earth, and from that went on, and at the time Hugh Owen had he'd lectured round various universities, and he'd written a book on it, and Pascal Jordan had written a book. He was a German. He'd written a book that had been translated, and they were the two main sources that I found at the time. So from that point of view, the expanding Earth theory was spot on. So I had my mechanism, if you like, of how gravity had changed, and everything fitted in there. And then I started researching into the bone strength of dinosaurs, looked more at those, found that we actually had values of bone strength. I did calculations on those as well that indicated that the bone strength of dinosaurs was not strong enough to support their mass. And from that, I then went on and produced the same estimate for paleogravity that I'd got previously. I then looked at, I looked at the various the pressure on hearts. Again, it explains that on dinosaurs. It explains the gigantic dragonflies. Also started finding out about these supergiant mammals that had existed after dinosaurs, and then I noted that they'd all reduced down in size. So here was an indication that paleogravity was actually increasing over time. So basically, over about 3 or 4 years, everything seemed to fit with what I'd initially thought. You know, that gravity was lower and the Earth was smaller.
Okay. I've got another question, because I think the human side's really important, because a lot of people on my channel, I'm sure, my whole thing is I think there's a silent majority of people who really have a lot of skeptical ideas. They're skeptics of a lot what you hear on TV and the media and all those people. When you have those science evangelists doing, multi-universes and all this thing, I think it's really important for us to, is to bring out not only the great stuff you're doing, but let's take a look at where you were. You were a mechanical engineer. You found that there are people who, the idea of expansion tectonics basically was named more after by James Maxwell, which I think is a really great name. But at that time, you are just a mechanical engineer. You're not a known scientist. You're not somebody famous who has an audience. You don't have even a YouTube channels that didn't exist. At that time,
no YouTube then.
I would imagine, this is just my imagination, because I went through a lot of this myself with Dr. Karazani, when he has a wonderful shows why Einstein's relativity has problems. But at that time, you sort of are interested in the journey, you're interested in the data, but there's some still fear. I'd imagine you had some fear at this time of not just going out and blurting this out and going to Oxford and saying, look what I found, this is huge implications. At that time, you were more quiet about that. Is that true? What was your feelings about that? Were you just so much involved in the journey that you didn't realize? But can you take yourself back emotionally and give us an idea of what you were feeling at that time?
No, I think that's true. I think initially it was an interesting concept, but I didn't particularly want to actually go out and tell everybody, oh, by the way, that I've solved the reason why the dinosaurs were gigantic. I kept relatively quiet about it. And it must have been, I reckon it was about 3 or 4 years before I actually convinced myself. I think convincing myself is first obstacle on any. I had to look at. I had to think of all the obstacles I could, and think through all the implications, and actually try and disprove it myself. And you know, after 4 years or so, I found I couldn't. And I thought, well, okay, I've got to start telling somebody about it, I think, because if it is true, it's so important. It obviously changes the whole way we look at the Earth. The fact that paleogravity is increasing, because at the moment, as you'll know, everybody believes that the Earth was created about 4,000 million years ago, at its present size and its present gravity, and it's stayed the same all that time.
Sure.
And obviously, what I was noticing was that it hadn't. You know, I was noticing that paleogravity was increasing, and these various geologists had also been saying virtually the same thing from a different point of view. From the geological side, they'd been saying that they'd noticed that the Earth had been increasing in diameter. Mm-hmm. So from my point of view, we were both saying the same thing, really. So.
Tell me, what's your let's keep it at this, because there's several topics going on here, obviously. So basically, you mechanically came up with the idea that, all right, you are in vacation. You've had this thing in your head that doubling in size. You think about dinosaurs. You're going, well, I got to go back now and prove that. You do research. You go to the library. You find out, and then you discover the people about expanding Earth. And tell me about your first contacts and with whom you really contacted. Who were the first people you actually corresponded with in the expansion tectonic world?
That would be Hugh Owen, who was a British geophysicist who worked at the Natural History Museum, and he'd written a book about. He'd written a book which I got hold of at the local library. He'd also presented various lectures around the country. So it was Hugh Owen who I first contacted. I think it's interesting. I don't know if this is generally realised, but although there's something like 1,000 papers being published about the expanding Earth concept. If scientists try and publish the ideas behind this in large journals, they're not actually allowed to publish any concepts that go against plate tectonics. So at the time, when I was looking, although there was 1,000 papers, none of those were visible to me. The only ones that were visible were these two main books and Hugh Owen. Quite a few of those papers were just hidden from me. So I didn't
what do you mean when you were talking about hidden? You're saying that you know about them now, but at the time
I know about them.
At the time, this guy Owen is this a person that had any? Was he he was one of the people that was proponents of the expansion tectonics? Is that correct?
Expansion tectonics. I mean, he'd written in Nature and whatever. So he's quite well known. Certainly among the British geologists, he's quite well known for the concept of Earth expansion. But quite a few of the other, certainly the Italian, the Polish, the German, the Russian, and even Samuel Waring Carey. He'd actually published 2 books by that time, and neither of those turned up in the search for Earth expansion, surprisingly. So it just shows you how hidden it was at that time. Probably it is still hidden today. I mean, a lot of people still don't realise there are 1,000, over 1,000 scientific papers. So
yeah. So when did you realize that there's always the first excitement. You go through a couple of things, self-doubt. I know when I was working with Dr. Carazani, it was interesting that you brought up some memories that I've had forgotten. I really struggled for many years to say, hey, is this guy's work real? Is this because I was reading the data, I was reading the math, I'm a mathematician. It made sense, but I started to doubt. I started to get, actually, my emotional side started to say, are you going down a way? Are you going down a path that I am going to expose myself and be like a crackpot, or I'm hooking my how do you say, my train or my car or myself to something that's really a guy who's a little crazy, and this isn't really true. So you seem to also go through that. But when was it? I just wanted to sort of say that because I do remember. But what is it that when was the point that where you realize you were a dissident? What I mean by that is a dissident is when you realize you're going against the mainstream. You have to make a conscious decision. I mean, I would imagine you had some point in your life, because this discovery that you make is so convincing, because you get to a point, like you said, now, yes, this is real. I've got people who are saying this. It's hidden. You're now talking about the hidden part. When was it? Tell me about your thought process, your emotional side of now realizing, if I'm going to go on, you can say, you could have thrown this out, right? You could have just said, all right, this is nice,
yeah.
It's great. Tell me about the struggle you had emotionally, because people who are our viewers, who are starting to see this for the first time, a lot of them are probably going through the same thing. What was that struggle, and why are you still here today doing this?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Why? It's just strange. Certainly, there's no monetary reward in doing it at all. Certainly, from that point of view, you'd be a lot better off saying, can I work some extra hours at work, and from all the effort I've put in. So why do it? And I suppose I do it because I think it's important. I think it's important that we actually progress and actually begin to realize, how the Earth is evolving. It's and I mean, the reason we're all here today, and we've all got this lovely life, and I'm talking to you over a network that goes, across the pond. The reason we're doing all that is because all the people in the past put a lot of effort in to actually thinking how the Earth works and how things are helping. So I suppose, from my point of view, I'm just doing my little bit, to make things better for the people that come later. Really.
Well, that's really.
I think that's really.
Yeah. Important. Yeah, it's really important. I'm going to ask you another question, because I'm going to extract this from, because we can talk for a long time. This is great. I love it. But yes. I want to get to the another emotional side. I know with my family, let me give you here's what happens. My daughter's 12. I was married I've been married almost 30 years, but we had our daughter later. It was planned. But by the time she was born, she comes home with a book that's got full of Einstein stuff, full of plate tectonic stuff. And she knows enough about me, and I'm just curious on your side, that here's what she tells me now. Dad, I need help with my science. I know you disagree with almost everything in the book, but please tell me, I need to help me. I got to get the answers. That's the way she puts it.
Yes.
So when she talked about, what is your family? What was that reaction? Because again, people who are watching this, a lot of them are my subscribers, you know, quite a lot of them now, they are going through that same struggle. Tell me about what your family, because it's one, you always get support from them, but not always. Do you have any insights into what happened to you on that side personally with this kind of conviction? Like, I know these people are standing, we know the scientific side. Tell me about the human side of Steve Hurrell making this decision to be a pioneer and try to push science forward.
Yeah, I mean, I had exactly the same, you know, exactly the same thing happened with my son, really, because I mean, my son was actually quite young when I started this, and as he was going through school, I was keen to say to him, listen, what your old man's saying here, nobody else believes this, so be careful, be careful what you say when, you know, if you're answering any, if you get answered any questions at school. Plate tectonics is what everybody believes. So this is what you answer, because we want you to pass those exams. So just give the answer that is true. I mean, I remember reading, there was an article, something to the effect that they'd done. They were trying to find out how scientifically literate the American public was, I think, and they were saying, and one of the questions was, it was about something about the Big Bang, and I always remember thinking to myself, well, the answer that obviously they're asking for is that the Big Bang is true, but what if it isn't? You know, you might be a PhD, and you might actually say to yourself, well, that question isn't right because the Big Bang isn't literally true. There's some other variation of it. So, you know, it's I think you've got to be quite cautious, and particularly for young geology students nowadays, if they're actually doing a course nowadays and they're watching this, okay, they can think about the expanding Earth theory, but their first objective should be to pass their course. So they should be answering the question of plate tectonics. This is the answer that is required for plate tectonics. They shouldn't be saying that's wrong because the Earth is expanding. They should leave that till later, I think. So.
But okay, I've got a question for you. We're going to go off on a tangent, but that's okay, because if we can make more than one video, that's great, or more one live session. But how do we do that then? If it's the case that, I mean, this is a tangent. I've got other things, but I have no problem of having a live interview with you to cover the other topics. But you bring up a great point, which actually we're trying to address in the CMPS this year, actually. And that is, okay, it's great to pass. I always made this story about you have a student, is a story that I often tell. You have a student, you have Physics 101, and I'm going to talk about relativity in this case. And you hear about special relativity, and you have two students there. One is an engineering student, wants to do something practical in the world, and the other one is a person who wants to become an astrophysicist at MIT at the Large Hadron Collider. And so both of them have to pass the test. But what happens is, if the engineering guy raises his hand and says, okay, you're telling me this, okay, here's what you're telling me. You're telling me basically that as you get close to the speed of light, mass increases. Why? Right? And when you ask that question, what happens then is you are now going beyond trying to pass it. You're trying to be a critical thinker and going on. But then if you're saying, and I understand what you're saying to geologists, but you got to pass your test. But what do we do? I mean, if we keep doing that, we'll never get to the point where these facts in my opinion, are facts. That these, if you took a dinosaur and they're trying, like Jurassic Park, you must laugh at Jurassic Park, right? You've got these giant animals walking around in gravity that would just be lying pieces of blubber there, right? They couldn't even stand. Yet we just, here's Jurassic Park, we can put them in. But what I'm getting at is, what is it in your mind? You've got to pass. Here's the geology students watching this right now. This is going to be, it's live now, but people are going to watch this over and over. What is your message to a person that you say, pass your test, but we'll never get there? Do you understand what I'm saying? How do you, this is off topic, but how do you, Stephen Hurrell, talk to a geologist from all the stuff that you know and say, you got to pass your test, but how do we move forward?
Well, I think it's very easy for people like me, an engineer who's not a geologist, not a paleontologist, to come along and actually sort of say, this is what I think, because I'm not going to lose. I'm not going to be held back in my career. I'm not going to lose, a pay increment because I've put forward some sort of theory. So it's quite easy for me, isn't it? But yeah. I think if you're actually in the establishment and you're thinking to yourself, this is all wrong, it's quite difficult, isn't it? Have you ever read about Bruce Heeson at all? Sort of, he was an early expansionist, and he actually lost about a decade of sort of research effort because he supported the expanding Earth theory. I don't know. I don't know. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I didn't know about that.
No, it's quite an interesting sort of what happened to him.
Well, I think I think what you're saying is very practical, and I think that's maybe we can talk about that in another video. I'd love to talk to you about that as well, because one of the things is, as I don't only want to talk about you about this book, which in my opinion is a must read for every critical thinker who likes science. I don't care if you have nothing to do with, you don't care about plate tectonics or anything. The implications are huge for science, and it's an easy way, because of dinosaurs and all that, to open up. But we can talk about maybe, I'd like to actually talk to you about it on a different time, about what we're going forward, because we in the CMPS are really working on the next year. We have a series of things that we are doing, including opening a new university where they can go to a student, like a geologist student. And this is one of the things I'd like to say to everybody. And that is, we have Stephen Hurrell here, and he's doing his work. But what we want to do is we're creating, and we're wanting to create, and are creating, a university that's online. And that university is going to be able to give the information to those people who are geologists. Like you said, they got to pass their courses, but want to start learning about alternatives. And so I'd like to talk to you at a different time in another interview and to talk about that, because I think you would have some really, I would love to have you on board and be one of the professors at our university, because it's all online today, but I think that's really interesting, and I think that gives my audience a really good feeling, that people feel like, oh no, now I've got to preach this to everybody. Maybe I don't want to do that. There are people that don't want to necessarily get out there and fight for it. So I think having a person like yourself talk about that. But we're going to get back on track, because I can see we're going to get together again. And that's if you're liking this. But let's get to something. Here's a topic that just fascinating. We're going to ask you a question. It's right in line what we've been talking about. Again, if you don't know, of course, I'm talking with my guest, Stephen Hurrell. He wrote the book. I'll put that up here. The book cover right over his face now, Dinosaurs in the Expanding Earth. And it's a very simple question, but it was really neat. And I got really I'll sort of preface it. James Maxwell, in my opinion, is the greatest living expansion tectonicist out there in the sense of a geologist who really has put out. There have been a lot of great people, but he's out there and he does this, and he doesn't have anything attached to it, like you said. But when I asked him this question, I was shocked because I love the guy. He, in my opinion, is one of my heroes, just like you are, in the sense of getting out there and what. I asked him, I said, oh, what about paleogravity? And I expected him to say, because he came to us about 8 years ago, he wrote an email, and I'm the web guy, and he wrote an email, and he asked me, he said, Dave, I need your help. And I go, why? I need physicists and people who are more theoreticians and modelers to help me out. The Earth has been gaining mass. I know it has. The geological evidence tells me that. But I need to find out evidence. So what's really strange, to go forward, he's actually been trying to find that out himself because he wasn't satisfied with the answers he got from us. We do have answers. But I was shocked when I asked him, I said, what is the exact geological evidence you have that tells us, that made you ask this question? He goes, well, I really don't have any. You should, what about, look at Stephen Hurrell's book. I think there's something, I said, yeah, about the dunes. And he goes, yeah. And I got, wait a minute. Here's a geologist who is talking about, I need help because there's mass increase. I know we need to have a mechanism for that. What is that? Can you help me for that? But then again, when he actually said, where in your books, in your writings, do you have it? He goes, no, not really. And I told him about the dunes. I won't say any more about that. And he says, I don't know. I was shocked. And that got me to thinking, are you the best the best science for paleogravity today?
Well,
I know that's shocking, but I want you to think about that, because from what I can see, and I did a lot of stuff when I read your book again and I went through and I saw about the dunes, you can tell us about the dunes. I was shocked. I was like, wait a minute, where's all the other evidence? And it seemed like I asked you, and it's like, you seem to be the guy doing this. Did you invent the word paleogravity?
No, I don't think I invented paleogravity. I think I think paleogravity. Well, it's just a derivative, really, of
but who invented it? Who invented it? Who invented that term?
So I must admit, I don't know. You've got me there.
Wait. You have to take credit for it, because that's what I thought. Unless you can find someone talking about paleogravity, and I'm not saying this for any reason, but I think it is an amazing thing, because if any of you geologists out there, I'm looking into the camera right now, I got Steve right next to me, right here. If you are interested, this could be a whole new area to look at. What is this the paleo evidence for mass increase? And going right to that, tell us about the one that you did find, and please tell me the story, because I'm super interested myself to find out how you came across this thing about dunes. And it's really, in my opinion, maybe the first and only so far paleogravity evidence we have. Tell us about that. The dunes. The dunes.
Well, yes, I didn't actually find that. When I first published my book, one of Samuel Warren Carey's young geology students, John Davison, he actually wrote to me and said he'd read my book and he'd passed it on to Professor Carey, and he actually told me about the dunes. So it was him that actually told me about it. Once I found out about it, I wrote off to Professor Mann over in the US, and and we had a little bit of a discussion about that, and basically that seemed to fit in with the data of increasing gravity. So there are some Russian ones as well, I think, but I don't think they've ever been translated into English.
So tell the viewers, what is it? What is the the dunes? How does that work? For those people who haven't read the book, and I expect everybody to read this book, but explain to us this paleogravity evidence for mass being less in paleological times.
Well, if you imagine a sand dune, and sand is blown onto the top of the sand dune, and then if you imagine all the sand running down the side of the dune, it actually forms what is called an angle of repose at a set angle, and this angle, in theory, it should vary depending on what the strength of gravity is. So if we can, and these sand dunes, if we look in the past, they've actually formed into a solid mass of sandstone, and we can still see where we can still see this angle of repose in the sand dunes. So if we look at ancient sand dunes, we can actually see that the angle has actually varied over time, and so this is what Professor Mann had done. He'd actually plotted the variation in the angle and related this to a variation in gravity.
Okay, so what you're saying is is basically if sand, if you pile sand, if you were to take sand in a bucket, right, and just let it drop, it'll form a cone, and that cone is going to have a slope completely dependent on the gravitational field, right?
Yes.
So if I go to another,
that's the concept.
So if I go to another planet, so even if we see dunes on another planet, for instance, of course there's other things like frozen and all that stuff, but if we were to do the same experiment on Mars, we'd have a different slope.
We should do, yes.
Okay, so my question to you is, and this is why I think this is fascinating. This is one of the things I wanted to spring upon you, but we're just having a great conversation. This is going way better than I expected. One of the really great things is this idea of paleogravity. So if there are young geologists out there, do you have any other ideas where we could find paleogravity geologists would be able to search for evidence? Is this something that's a hugely open field that could be really fascinating for people to do, that geology has, that they could this actually could be a linchpin maybe that sort of puts all of this into a place where, wow, what Hurrell's talking about and the expansion tectonics is right, because we're now starting to see more evidence, because we're not finding it. I guess what I'm asking is, we're not finding paleogravity evidence because we're not looking for it.
No, that's right. I had a few ideas and put them in my book. I thought that perhaps raindrops might get a bit bigger, because as they fell down in reduced gravity, so you could imagine perhaps there's fossil evidence of raindrops that possibly we could see something a bit larger. Obviously there's I mean, to me, obviously all the animals are the main indication that gravity was reduced. We've got pterosaurs. Pterosaurs are particularly large, and they're very interesting from the point of view that because they're actually held up by the muscle. They're slightly different than land-based animals in that they're actually about three times the linear size of than they should be. Whereas land-based animals are only about twice as large as they should be in our gravity. So mainly, there's lots of land animals, plants as well. I mean, they're obviously interesting. Dragonflies, they obviously started off in the Carboniferous. They started off with 3/4 of a meter wingspan, and they've gradually reduced down in size. So they were still quite big during the dinosaurs' time, but they've reduced right down in size until today. So there's obviously something that could be plotted there to actually see how gravity has varied from that point of view.
Okay, well that's great. Now, actually, believe it or not, this is my first live thing, but we have actually 10 people watching, which is great. I want to thank you. I want to thank everybody who is watching. I am following here on the, and they do have some questions. I've answered some of them.
Yes.
So here's one, and I think this is a really good one, especially since you're a mechanical person as well, and I'm sure you've thought of this. This is one of the, I think it comes from with one of the explanations that we have from mainstream often. Why? I mean, we haven't even talked about that. Mainstream's attempt to try to explain that, right? But this sort of happens to be in that vein. It says lower gravity would cause a less dense atmosphere. How would organisms get enough oxygen? That's from Draft Science. I know this guy has a channel. He is a dissident himself, but that's a question that he has. Did you want me to repeat that? Lower gravity would cause a less dense atmosphere. How would organisms get enough oxygen?
Well, actually, that's quite an interesting question, because one of the I mean, there's obviously a multitude of sort of explanations of why dinosaurs became large, knocking around, and one of them was that the atmosphere was reduced at that time. So I think it goes that because it was less dense, the only animals that could breathe effectively were the dinosaurs, and I something might have escaped me here, I think, because for the life of me I can't think why that would make dinosaurs become large, but there is something to that effect.
Yeah, I think one of the things is we have a lot of explanations. Obviously, they try to come up with it. It's sort of, I guess they really sort of ignore it more than anything, don't they? I mean, mainstream science they sort of just don't talk about it because they don't have an explanation. When they don't have an explanation, they tend to not address it as their answer. Is that really what you find? I mean, because one of the things I've heard is, well, the atmosphere's different. They would breathe different, and then they could, that kind of stuff. They seem to always come up with some explanation, but isn't it more ignoring it than actually addressing it with the mainstream science?
It's multiple ad hoc explanations. So if we say, for instance, why were dinosaurs so large, we'll get one explanation for that. But then if we go and say why were insects so large, we'll get another explanation for why insects were so large in the Carboniferous, for instance. That and typically they say that actually the atmosphere was more dense at that time. So we'll have a multitude of different explanations, and I think this is one of the real strengths of the reduced gravity idea, is that this one idea explains everything. It explains insects. It explains the dinosaurs. It explains the supergiant mammals, and we no longer need all these ad hoc theories. So
right. Now I'm gonna to close up. We're up on an hour already. I'm gonna close this up. But I think
it's gone quickly.
Oh, it does, and we haven't hit on even some other things. I definitely want to.
Oh, we haven't even discussed anything yet, have we?
No,
really?
no, but that's the problem with me. It was when I get with people who are like-minded critical thinkers and people that I admire, like I admire your work so much that I could literally spend the rest of my life just conversing with people like you. I mean, what you learn and what you get from. But I want to sort of wrap this up with a question, which is why. What do you want? What do you want people to get when they read their book? Oh, I know. No, that wasn't it. Because when I'm talking, I often lose my train of thought. We have obviously. You have come in the door through your way. I came through a door through special relativity and relativity. But that door opened up a lot more. I wasn't one that really questioned the Big Bang. I didn't really question the models of particle physics. I really didn't question plate tectonics. It was, I saw only plate tectonics because I saw the marvelous. I'm in this because of the 2008. I saw Neil Adams, who is a great friend now, do those amazing videos. I mean, he's got millions of people viewing expansion tectonics. Doesn't matter what, that's important. But the thing is, my question to you is, yes, my question to you is that you came through the door as a mechanical engineer looking at when you just have structures and that, oh my gosh, dinosaurs show me that gravity was less, therefore all the huge implications. What you are now talking to me, I heard you say this, oh well, the Big Bang, well, what about that? About relativity, a lot of that opened the door to a lot of other subjects. And tell me about your realization about that. Not only is plate tectonics something we have to look at and maybe come up with other models, but other things, big things in science. Can you tell me a little bit about how this has opened the door to those kinds of things? Because the average person, you could easily say that, well, plate tectonics is not the right way. Expansion tectonics is the right way, is the right idea. This is the way the universe works. But the Big Bang, that's all true. Did this change did this open your mind to other things other than plate tectonics?
I think it has to. I think once you start actually thinking about things for yourself, and you follow everything through logically, you realize that all sorts of things are wrong. And I mean, from my point of view, I can see that plate tectonics, it's really started out with the assumption that the Earth was created at its initial size. And that really comes from the biblical idea of creation, So, and if you read about the Big Bang, quite often they mention that the reason people like the Big Bang is because it comes from the biblical idea of an initial starting point for creation, So we see a very similar, reason for fixed ideas coming through. I think that people always start off with what they know, and then they try and keep that concept going. Even though they don't realize it, even though they don't realize that they're actually trying to keep this idea of a constant size Earth going, or the concept of creation. And
do you have any? For example, we have the CMPS, and the CMPS is, I think,
yes.
Is in my opinion the best science organization in the world. It's not because it's the biggest, it's not because it's the best, but because you can go there without a title.
Yeah.
You can argue what I said in my movie, Einstein Wrong, The Miracle Year. At the end, it took me 8 years to come up with this phrase. Don't listen to me, listen to what I say. And so what does that mean?
Yes.
It doesn't
Yes.
mean, what it means is I don't care who you are. When we have our CMPS conference coming up, I don't care. We've got literally an ex-Supreme Court justice. We've got people with PhDs in physics from prestigious universities. We've got, you know, people who have no title at all. They're just engineers or just science lovers. When they get up and they start talking, no one cares about those titles. What they care about is what they are saying. And I think one of the things that is really great is to see that you and I, for instance, came in from very different angles. And then you start to realize that this opening that we see with Corbyn in the UK, Bernie Sanders here, and politics, we've been told, oh, you know, I voted for all these Democrats, you know, I'm more progressive, I want everybody to be good, I'd rather have everybody good and then instead of a good bunch of billionaires and everybody bad. But I didn't know why my salary kept for 16 years, but someone came and opened my eyes. And I think right now we are in the same position with science. Unfortunately, we're getting hijacked by the climate people and saying that flat Earth and all that. Flat Earth, by the way, is a bunch of hoax. People know it. People who are doing that are doing it for publicity. But we have, I think, the same. Do you feel now, to wrap it up, just the final thing, do you feel that we are really, with all the tools we have the ability to create a university online? I mean, Oxford, you can go take courses online. You don't have to go there anymore. That means people like us can create courses in the expansion tectonics. We can create courses in alternatives, and you can make up your own mind. Is that? Do you see more hope today than you did maybe even 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think the internet's made a tremendous difference, hasn't it? I mean, when I started off, it was very difficult to actually find any information about the Earth expansion. But if I started today, I could type it in Google, and within 5 minutes, I'd have a whole list of scientific papers to read about it. And you know, so within a day, I think you'd easily have a couple of hundred papers to read, wouldn't you? And so it's a tremendous difference, I think, and it's got to be good. It's got to be good for developing new ideas.
Yeah, I think so. And I really want, like I said, first of all, I want to thank you because we're going to wrap it up here for this time. I'm going to have you back because your work. I just want to say it to you from all the people who have been watching. I've got some of the questions. The questions, some of them were a little different topic, but I want to appreciate everybody who's been watching. But I want to thank you so much for writing the book, taking the time to do this, and continuing the fight in a good way. But I mean, to continue to give this information. But I also want to stress about all the people out there, all my subscribers, all the people who like who are critical thinkers, read this book. The reason is because once you see the evidence that the Earth had to have less mass, the implications and all the other things, you're going to have to open up a lot of other doors. And this is an exciting one because dinosaurs are exciting things. People like them, right? Expanding Earth, when I first saw it, I was fascinated. I think this is an easy, I think your book is an easy way for a person to become a critical thinker. You know, you can read a book about, like Karazani's work. It's pretty heady stuff. The average person is not going to understand why two frames of reference mathematically and physically go down to one. It's not easy. But when you talk about dinosaurs and you look at the sizes, this book really, for anybody who loves science, can read it, correct?
Yeah. I think a lot of people have enjoyed it as well. I certainly get some good reviews. I think a lot of people have been very happy that they've read it.
Yeah, and how can people get it? They can. I'm going to put the link below. Obviously, after when this is done, I'll have the link below. People can buy this on Amazon, UK, and in the United States, around the world. How does that work? Yeah.
If you just go to Amazon, they'll have the book there. There's a number of other bookshops as well. So I think if you just type it in Google, Dinosaurs, type the title in, it just pops up there, and there's a number of bookshops that actually stock it. It's available as a hardcover. A lot of people have been buying the Kindle version now, so that seems to be very popular. So you can, again, with the power of the internet, you could have it there within about a minute, I reckon. So
yeah, absolutely. That's I think that's the way I got it. I think I got a Kindle edition, but because you can pick up your phone. There it is, and I expect sometime.
Hardcover version.
When are you going to come to one of our conferences?
Well, it's quite a long way, isn't it, over there to physically get there?
What if I get you a free plane ticket?
Weren't you going to put it on the internet though? I mean that would be ideal.
Oh yeah, no, we are actually we are. We're streaming it live, and we have multi-camera stream.
I know. I followed it. I followed last year's when I could. I think so. I mean, that was good. Being able to follow it.
Well, I'm thinking about maybe having one in Europe in that area, but maybe one day we'll bring you when you get older. You're still quite young because our awards are lifetime.
I'm only a young whippersnapper yet, aren't I?
Yeah, but no, we gave out lifetime achievement awards in 2010 that the average age was 91.
Yes.
I don't think you're not in your 90s, so if you're not a nono, just you're a baby.
No, not old enough yet. Yes.
But anyways, I want to thank you so much again. I really appreciate it. Congratulations on your work. I recommend it to everybody, and I'm sure we're going to have you back. This is going to be immediately available, and I appreciate everybody who's been watching. Like I said, we've had 9 or 10 people watching. I've answered some questions, but generally we've gotten a lot of those things. And I'm going to have you back. I'd love you. I'm going to have this unrecorded because I want to record these things so that you can't get out of it. Would you be interested in helping us with our university and some of our information in gathering and putting this information into these kinds of formats, our wikis, etc., to help us out, disseminate more of this information to the public? Would you be willing to at least put your name to that and help out with that?
Yeah, I was looking at the wiki that you set up there, so I was wondering how you actually get into it. I didn't. Presumably, you have to be added, do you?
You have to be added.
Things, so.
Well, here's the problem. Sure. Okay, well that's great then. I have it on film. Yeah. I have it recorded. You can't get out of it unless you go back on your own word. But thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you so much, Stephen. And remember, folks, I really appreciate it. And remember, always stay critical, stay thinking. I'm Dave D. Hilster. I'm your science therapist. I'm going to get everybody on board and read this book. It is absolutely fascinating. It's not real technical, but it's absolutely a must read for every critical thinker. Thank you very much. I really greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. See you guys later. Thanks all you watchers, and thanks my subscribers. Take care. Ciao for now.